it's the whole package, isn't it? As you're saying, it's not think when you say communication, people instantly think, oh, it's either talking or it's written, but obviously it's not. And a leadership or a leader's role is, for me, a lot of it is based on inspiring and leaving people with a message and a feeling of empowerment. Certainly, as if I think of an effective speaker who is also a leader, that's kind of what I guess stereotypically would say a goal of theirs would be. And there's so many different ways to do that, like you were saying, leaning in, doing a message, body language, etc., etc. But for me, effective communication, linking, I guess, to the respect of preferences, is to understand the people that you are leading and how they like to receive that communication. Because some people might enjoy a phone call where you're sort of saying everything that needs to be done or everything that needs to be achieved, but that might not resonate with other people. Some people, there's a lot of, obviously, things like Teams, Google Chat, all of that in the workplace has boomed because of the remote working. But I know a lot of people that really kind of hate that way of communication, and that it's not tangible for them because it's too instant, or the messages kind of disappear, that you're not kind of permanent like an email is, or like some other form of communication. So there's obviously what you prefer as a leader, but there's also what your team prefer as being led, and how they prefer to be communicated with. And that's not to say that you're sort of pandering to every individual about, saying the same message 10 different ways or 10 different times. It's about making sure that you have broad appeal and a broad style that is hitting the right notes for every individual. So if you're having a meeting with your team and you're saying things vocally on camera with gesticulations, kind of like I am now, that's great, but make sure there's some minutes that are sent out afterwards via email. Little simple follow-up things like that don't take a lot of time, but are going to make that communication more effective, would be something to say for me. So making sure that everyone's sort of preference is fulfilled generally, if possible.
Yeah, and I think, we talked about evaluations before, but an effective evaluation in Toastmasters is not dissimilar to delivering a performance review, or at my workplace we call them performance planning reviews. So you prepare. So as a speaker, you prepare what you're going to say. You get up there and say it. And so as a manager or a leader in a business, you prepare the review. And I think the ultimate goal is that whatever you're going to put in that review shouldn't be an absolute shock to the person you're delivering it to, because you've probably had conversations before, and then in Toastmasters they've been evaluated before, so they kind of know what their strengths are as a speaker, where they've got opportunity to grow, where their own hang-ups are. So when they've delivered the speech and you get up and give a verbal evaluation, you've probably got about 20 notes that you've made on like specific areas, but you've only got 3 minutes to deliver it in. So you really want to focus on what's the biggest impact on the speech for you, what might be really useful for the audience to hear and pick up on. But then you deliver them a written follow-up that's got more meat in it, if you will. So that is, to me, is a really effective communication. There is about saying, well, I'm going to get up and tell you what I thought, but I'm also going to thank you.
Hi, James.
That's Alistair. Yeah, welcome to the real world, everyone, where my husband brings in the middle of a recording. So evaluations, yeah. So that, I think, it seems so simple, but yeah, what you're saying is like actually there's communication happening in everything that we do in life, and we need to be a little bit mindful about how that's delivered. And we have structures and ways in Toastmasters for our club meetings, but even when we talk about the leadership side of Toastmasters, everyone's different. So I know you and I, Alistair, quite like email follow-up and minutes and all of that, but then there's plenty of people who don't really read that kind of thing. And so when you go into the next meeting, they'll say, they'll start talking about something, say, no, we covered this in the last meeting. But then by having minutes, you can say, well, right, this is what we discussed. And yeah, some people need to be reminded a few more extra times. Some people will just live and die by minutes and project plans and actions. Other people never read an email. but if you call them up on the phone and ask them for something, they're always there. So yeah, you've got to try and hit everyone with a communication method in writing, but sometimes it requires a bit of follow-up. So yeah, being effective with how you communicate, it's quite complicated depending on who you're working with and who your audience is, I guess.
Yeah, I think mindful, that's a really good word. I was kind of struggling before with a word that kind of summarized, but I think, yeah, mindful, being mindful of everyone's preferences, I think is a really nice way to put it. And I guess linking to the mutual side of things as well, what we're saying about evaluation is, and I think this is something that's crucial to the success of an evaluator, is that they themselves also receive an evaluation for how well they have
Mm.
evaluated the specific speech. So no one is immune from that feedback. It's not just five people on a pedestal at the meeting, giving out the rules, giving out the feedback. And that's not the way that it should be in business either. It
Yeah.
should be that kind of mutual ground of, this is my feedback to you. And always in my kind of one-to-ones and reviews with my team, I always say, do you have any feedback or evaluation for my leadership style, the way that we're doing things? How do you think that this is going? Do you have any feedback for me? And I think those open conversations inspire better relationships and a more transparent communication as well. And I think also, to build on what you were saying, you hit a really good note, and I always see this kind of pulled up in some of the meetings, is that the evaluation is not just for the individual that's being evaluated, it's for the benefit of the whole group. Everyone can learn. That's why the feedback is shared in a public forum. It's not just a slip that is handed to someone, it's not a private affair, it's done in front of the whole club, again inspiring that openness. But the reason behind that is because everyone should be able to learn from the evaluation that's been given to that individual, and again, just inspires the openness, and that
Mm.
lifelong learning attitude.